All right, so what is going on? Today's video is on attribution, ROAS, CPA. What do you need to look at? Do you even really need tracking software in the first place? So let's go ahead and get into this, and I'll explain to you why I believe that tracking software like third-party attribution tools, where you're relying on third-party tracking to make decisions, is a flawed way of looking at things. And I've studied this stuff extensively. I've spent hours researching and researching and researching this stuff. And from my own personal experience, I want to give you guys my take. So let's go ahead and get into this. I've spent thousands of dollars on programs. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on paid ads. And I want to give you my thoughts on attribution as a whole and why it is a flawed way of looking at things, in my opinion. So, do you need attribution to be able to effectively manage, like a third-party attribution tool where you can see the number of sales based on some pixel, a third-party pixel that an ad gets, to be able to make effective decisions? The answer, in my opinion, is no. If you know how to actually look at the data and read the data in most cases. So there are some cases where it may make sense, but generally speaking, you probably don't need to rely on that to make decisions. So why? Ad platform attribution in itself is not actionable data when you're looking at the number of sales that is coming in through an ad platform. So especially due to this whole iOS 14 privacy update, which has caused attribution to be this big mess, especially if the paid media effort is your top of funnel for customer acquisition. Think about it like this. So pick a brand where you bought a product online from that brand. Now tell me exactly which ad is responsible for you making that decision to purchase that product. Tell me the one ad that you saw that is responsible for you making that decision to purchase that product. You most likely cannot do that. In the vast majority of cases, you cannot tell me the one ad that you saw, the one thing that you saw that was the ultimate reason that you purchased the product. And even if you did, there's other factors at play that affect that decision to make a purchase. So think about it like this. Let's say I'm thinking about a brand, I'll pick any brand, some shoes brand that I like online, or maybe it's a supplement brand. I'm drinking pre-workout right now, I'm about to go to the gym here shortly. So we'll pick a supplement brand. How about that? So there's this one guy, I won't name him, but he has a supplement brand and he has a YouTube channel. And on his YouTube channel, he talks about fitness content. He talks about all this stuff. And they also run ads, right? And they do stuff on social media. They do stuff with email marketing. They do all these different marketing efforts. And they've got this, they're pretty large brand doing multi millions of dollars in sales, probably, I believe, about a 9-figure brand, if I had to guess right now. They're in a lot of the big retailers. Very good sized supplement brand that's kind of a leader in the space for supplements and energy drinks. And he has a YouTube channel. It's his own personal YouTube channel where he talks about fitness related stuff. And I find that interesting to watch, to learn scientific breakdowns of pre-workouts, or talking about different supplements, anything to do with fitness, exercises, whatever it is. I find that stuff entertaining. And so I watch this content, right? But let's say, for example, I'm engaging with this content on social media. I follow them on social media, or maybe I checked out his website, and that data is sent back to that pixel from my behavior. Or they also have data on me because they have all this data on everything that I've done and everything that I've interacted with on their social media platforms. So they take all this data and they take all the data and they decide to show me ads for that product. Now, I was aware already that he had a brand. I'm already in the market for supplements. And I've already developed a positive impression of this brand through what I've seen on social media prior to even seeing any ads. So I haven't even seen any ads yet. And now I get shown this ad for some sale that's going on, or maybe it's just some good ad that kind of pushes me over the edge and gets me to buy. Was that ad the only thing that played a factor in that decision to purchase? Or let's say I saw 20 ads and then I didn't buy from the ads, but then I get an email because I signed up for their email list, or I went on the cart page and they cookied my data from when I was visiting on their website. And, long story short, I get an email, for the abandoned cart. Was the abandoned cart the thing that ultimately led to that purchase? See, so this is why attribution in itself, you can get way ahead of yourself and you can, make it way more complicated than it has to be. This stuff is complicated, but you can make it way more complicated than it has to be and be looking at data that doesn't even really directly correlate to what it is you were trying to solve when you start to get hyper obsessed over ROAS or even cost per purchase. And yes, while you can look at those things and it's nice to look at this stuff here, it doesn't tell you the full story, is my point. So here's some cases where it may make sense for third-party software to be used. Now, by the way, I'm not referring necessarily to the attribution tools in this third-party software. I'm referring more so to looking at the blended metrics of a business. One of the tools I love for that is something called Triple Whale. You can find it in the link below, or feel free to just go search for it online. Either way, doesn't matter to me. But Triple Whale is a great tool. You can find the link below if you'd like to check it out. But basically the benefit with something like Triple Whale, or there's other ones out there as well, is you can look at blended metrics and it can pull the data from your Shopify store or other e-commerce store, whatever it is. You can connect it to like your Amazon, other sites as well that you may sell on, and it can make tracking and attribution and actually making data-driven decisions a little bit easier because you have more concrete data to look at. It may not be 100%, but it's at least more actionable than what you would get from just looking at a ad account CPA, right? So I'll give you an example. So let's say, for instance, you have a lower ticket e-com brand. You're spending a few $100 a day. Decent amount of money, for most people. It's not a crazy amount of money in e-commerce, but let's say you're spending a few $100, $200, $300 a day on ads. You're starting to see some success with the advertising on Facebook, and you want a better way to be able to track things. So in that case, you could use something like Triple Whale and look at the blended metrics to get a better idea of your advertising efforts. Because here's what you'll find. A lot of times when you're looking at your blended metrics and you're looking at your ad account platform metrics, they are not going to be exactly the same. So your ad account metrics are going to differ from the blended metrics. And the blended metrics are what is directly correlated, or far more correlated than the ad account metrics, to your overall success as a business, if that makes sense. So what I'm looking at whenever I'm trying to gauge success, I'm not necessarily just looking at cost per purchase, right? Because I could have an ad that is a great top of funnel ad. It does a really good job of driving the right attention. And maybe those people, they don't buy right away. So my ad account attribution is going to tell me that the ad has a low ROAS, or it has a high CPA. But this ad takes majority of the spend because the platform, Facebook in this case that we're talking about, has this alien technology. And they know from all the data that they have on everything that I've shopped at, they can see all the sites that I visit, the pages that I've interacted with. They have all this data on me, and they keep gathering more and more data over time. And they know when to show me these ads at the exact time to make me more interested in buying, and which ads can play a bigger impact in my decision to purchase. So if I am shown this ad, even if I don't buy right away, they can tell that that is a good ad. That is likely a good ad. And more often than not, they're going to be right. Now, sometimes you might have an ad where you get a lot of spend and your overall blended metrics go down. And in that case, you could just turn that ad off, because it may very well be, okay, well, it's getting engagement and it's getting attention and Facebook likes it, but really it's not fully meeting the business objective that we are trying to accomplish if you're running conversion ads for purchases. So in that case, you might turn the ad off. But my point is, looking solely just at the cost per purchase to make decisions, it's not going to tell you the full story, because let's say you have an ad. I'll give another example here. You've got an ad and it appeals to a very, very small audience. And Facebook only spends, you're spending $500 a day, whatever. Facebook only spends $10 a day on this ad, but it gets a $10 cost per purchase. Now, if you tried to force spend to this ad because it only appeals to this very small group of people, or it's being used as kind of a bottom of funnel retargeting ad, for example, that appeals to a very small group of people, it may have a very good cost per purchase or a very good ROAS, but the ad may not be scalable. And so that's where people get stuck. They get stuck looking at the ad account ROAS. They're wondering which ads are actually responsible for bringing in the sales. And while you can get a good idea from the sense of, say, for example, Facebook's got all this data, you're running creative tests, and you're making decisions based on what's earning spend, generally speaking. And so you have ads that, they come in at a really low CPA, lower than your account average, and it's earning spend. I've never, so far that I can recall, seen an ad come in at a very low cost per purchase on the platform with accurate tracking and earn majority of spend or a significant amount of spend and be a bad ad. I've never seen it happen that I can recall. So the platform is extremely good and usually accurate at being able to find which ads are actually the best to spend the money on if you allow it the opportunity to, if you don't restrict the platform and tell the platform where it needs to spend the money. So that's why I separate the campaigns by business objective. So if you have a different product with a different offer, that'd be a different business objective, right? But if the products are the same, you're running the ads to the same product that's on the same landing page. It's the same product. You put those ads in the same campaign, and you would allow the platform to figure out how to use those ads in the funnel. And you can see how they're being used in the funnel by looking at the day-to-day frequency. Lower frequency is generally going to be more top of funnel. Higher day-to-day frequency, when looking at the daily breakdown, generally is going to be lower in the funnel. So you can get a picture of where the ads are being used in the funnel by looking at the frequency. And you can see how much the platform likes the ads by looking at the spend. And you can also get some idea by looking at the cost per purchase too, even though that's not telling you the full story, because they're using statistical modeling to basically optimize the ads. It's not 100%, but you can still get an idea by looking at the cost per purchase. So say, for example, you have a really high cost per purchase, but it's getting a ton of spend. It's coming in at a low CPM, like very low CPM. It's getting a ton of spend, and all of your other ads get better whenever this ad starts to spend more. That may be a really good top of funnel ad, especially if you're seeing your blended CPA getting better. So there's nuance here. It's not as simple as this ad gets a high ROAS, so it's a good ad. Yes, sometimes it can be. But generally speaking, focusing on ROAS alone and not looking at the full picture does not tell you the whole story. So here's some uses, in my opinion, when it wouldn't make sense to be using this sort of software. So say, for example, your local business, or whatever, gym, maybe, whatever it is, or you're just starting out, e-commerce, you're spending $20 a day on ads, and you're wondering which profit tracking software you need, or which third-party attribution software you need. You don't need any, in my opinion, at this stage. Because if you're only spending $20 a day on ads, most likely you can just kind of look at your overall sales and say, okay, I'm spending $20 a day on ads. I made $60 in sales. Okay, and then just roughly do the math in your head and kind of figure out where you need to be from there. Or you can use like a break-even CPA calculator, and then you could just roughly figure out at that scale. It wouldn't be very difficult to figure out, if you had to put something into like ChatGPT, for example, you could, but it shouldn't be that difficult to really figure out roughly where you are and where you need to be. And if you have any kind of data-driven answers that are needed, like you need to figure out your target CPA, you can put that into Chat GPT with these AI tools, and it can help you figure that out if you can't calculate it yourself, right? So at that level of spend, like when you're not spending a significant amount of money, which this may be a significant amount of money to somebody who's just starting out and has a local business and other expenses, and that's fine. That's not what I'm saying. But in advertising terms, if you're spending $20 a day, that's not considered by most people to be a significant amount of spend, right? And so you also have to be realistic with what you're expecting. You can't expect to put $20 into the platform on one of the most expensive ways to acquire a customer and to get attention and expect them to give you $1 million in sales for $20 or $10,000 in sales for $20 or a 10-cent cost per purchase in the United States. It's not realistic to have these sort of expectations. You could put $20 in and have the expectation of, okay, maybe I could try to get 60 in sales at that level of spend, and try to shoot for that. But realistically, you have to have a realistic expectation, and you have to know that your product can actually be able to be ran using ads profitably. If you're selling a product where it costs you $20 to make and you're selling it for $25, you're going to have a very hard time trying to get that profitable running ads, especially if you're just looking at first order profitability and there's no sort of back end offer. Now, sure, there's some other stuff that's more advanced that you could get into, talking about like, book funnels and all this other stuff. Like there's different offers people can run where you could lose money on that initial order and still make a lot more on the back end. And you see that a lot of times, like supplement companies, they'll do these free plus shipping offers where they send out samples of their product, just try to get people to try the product so they come back and buy again. There's all kinds of stuff like that. But my point is, if you are running ads to a product where you don't have a lot of margin to work with, you have unrealistic expectations if you're expecting to be profitable at scale, especially. Because as you spend more money, ad costs can also get more expensive. So anyways, here's the bottom line, just to wrap this up. CPA inside the ad platform is good to look at, but by itself, it doesn't tell the full story. So there's other things you have to look at outside of just CPA. Does this have a high CPA? Does this have a low CPA? You have to see where the ad is actually being used in the funnel. And you have to look at other metrics to figure out if it's a good ad or if it's a bad ad. And you have to ideally also be looking at blended metrics and spend to give you a better picture of what to look at for performance. So there's nuance here when I'm talking about this stuff. So when you're looking at blended metrics are going to give you more concrete data to go off of. In a perfect world, if you were spending a really, more significant amount of money, let's say you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars per day, you may have a finance team you're working with. And maybe you have some kind of custom reporting dashboard that you can use because you have a really good e-commerce, finance team or whatever. I mean, who knows? There may be other stuff that's a little bit more advanced that you could have access to, or other ways that you could do things outside of just using some platform once you're at that stage, right? But it's good for the majority of businesses who are kind of in that, range of spending several $100+ a day, anywhere up to, even maybe a couple thousand. It would be good to potentially be looking at blended results rather than just ad platform results to figure things out and see how much to spend and budget and everything, in my opinion. So blended metrics give you more concrete data and a better picture of performance when you're looking at stuff because they tell more of the full story on how the business is actually functioning. Because as we know, it's often not one specific thing that is responsible for something happening. It's often 50 different things that have played a part in that customer journey. They could have seen 20 different YouTube videos, and then they see 5 different ads, and then they see 3 different ads on this other platform, and then they see 18 different emails because they signed up for your email list, and then they finally get a text. So which one of those one things played the most role in that purchase being made? So in my opinion, that's why you're going to see a lot of times the highest cost of acquisition, or the highest cost per purchase or the worst profitability when you're looking at just ad account results from something that is more top of funnel that is being targeted towards cold traffic, such as, say, Facebook or Meta, because it's more scalable. You're reaching a broader audience of people. You're getting those people in the door so that you can also utilize those other efforts, which are less expensive, to make money as well. So the job of that platform is not to give you the lowest cost per purchase. It's not to give you the most profitability necessarily, although it can be a very, very powerful tool to grow a business. The job is not to just make you super profitable. The job is to amplify your business model, to get more attention, to get more people in the door, to make them want to buy. So once you understand that and you understand how the platform actually works, you can start to use it properly and make the most out of it. So anyways, if you found this helpful, feel free to leave a comment below. But that is about all that I've got for now. And if you want to check out Triple Whale, there should be a link down below somewhere where you can check it out. But like I said, attribution for, if you're just starting out, you're spending $20 a day, not necessarily something that you necessarily need, in my opinion, to be successful with ads. So if you got any questions, leave them in the comments, but hopefully you guys found this helpful.